Hey, what's up? And welcome back to A-Aron Reacts. Super stoked to launch a new mini series with Angelina Jordan here of All of Me, the Billie Holiday classic. We're going to talk more about the history of that and so forth. This is a mini series, so I'm gonna front load some more information up front that I think will be relevant as we get into this. But there's some 7 or 8 recordings or so, and I think there's some opportunities to combine a couple. I did learn a little trick where I can, turn down the volume and I open up a couple of the videos, and I saw that one of the rehearsals was at the same place as, one of the performances and these types of things. So I have a little bit better understanding. I looked at some of the dates and stuff, so I'm sequentially doing it at least for the most part. So we're getting prepared for those. Now they may change a little bit in terms of how I group them and so forth. So we'll see. But for starters, we're going with the age of 12. This is a private performance, private, recording, if you will. And so yeah, let's talk briefly. So again, I'm gonna front load some information about all of me because I think it's gonna be important, or some of it will come into play. I don't know how much of it, but some of it will likely come into play as we talk about it. So and also Billie Holiday, right? So feel free to fast forward, although I think that especially if you're gonna watch this series, that it may make some sense to pay attention. So. Um, all of me, first of all, and I do have some notes for this, so some of this I'm reading. I am a little prepared for this one. So it's a popular jazz standard, originally written in 1931, by Gerald Marks and Seymour Simons, excuse me, and it's been performed by so many people. The most iconic is Billie Holiday's version. Now, not only does Dimly Lit show Billie Holiday as the artist here that Angelina's doing All of Me for, and then there's some other ones with the John Legend version, right? So we're not doing that here. We'll do some of those separately. But here we're talking about that Billie Holiday version. So not only does Dimly Lit show that, but additionally, we know how much Angelina Jordan idolized Billie Holiday. And so I'm assuming that she is taken from her version. Now, that said, there are a lot of other versions out there that she might have pulled some influences from, or even adaptations of arrangements or otherwise, right? And so let's walk through that. So 1931 it first came out, and that was in key of C, and that was changed a decade later by Billie Holiday. I think actually it was changed by Louis Armstrong and Django Reinhardt as well in the 32 the next year. Louis Armstrong added a little bit of a lively, upbeat feel to the song, in very Louis type of way, and then Django Reinhardt did a instrumental showing his virtuosic guitar playing. Now, the most iconic, as I mentioned, is Billie Holiday, which is a decade later, 1941, and it's what most people are familiar with. Then we have versions of Count Basie Orchestra adding that big band swing influence. The 1950s and 60s, we had Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald doing it, Sarah Vaughan, typical Frank stuff. Ella, smooth voice, some scatting. We hear scatting with Sarah Vaughan as well and add some depth and emotion to the song. Willie Nelson in the 70s actually introduced a country infused version of it, just showing this versatility of the song across genres. We're going to talk about what makes that versatile. And then, we get into the 80s, and there's, Dean Martin, Michael Bublé, and so forth, and beyond. So there's a lot of different aspects of that. Now, one of the things that makes this universal and so adaptable is that most of these melancholic type of torch songs, standards especially, are minor keys, and it gives it that sad melancholic feel, whereas All of Me is actually in a major key. So it's a bit different, right? And from that perspective, it's more nuanced, and it gives a little bit more emotional palette, but it also allows for more adaptability and kind of mainstream beyond, kind of jazz ears and so forth, right? Not that minor doesn't, can't work in some song on the radio or whatever, it does all the time. But just traditionally, there's a match there. There's not a ton that I can recall. I mean, if you look through time, there's plenty of examples, but generally speaking, the ratio, right, of those sad, melancholic songs are certainly going to be much heavier in the minor because it gives that feel, right? And so now let's briefly talk about Billy Madison. Wow. Um, I think that, it was we talk about Billie Holiday. It's important to look at kind of her career. It was short-lived. And she was born in 1950. And this there is relevance in all this. She died in 1959. Now, in the 30s, she had more of a youthful, smooth, clear tone to some of her songs, and you can hear her change throughout her career. In the 40s, she began to change her voice due to drug and alcohol use. It became deeper tone, more melancholic, more harsher tone, right? She had a greater sense of vulnerability and emotion that started to tie into that. And then the 50s, it got further deteriorated, right? And so she expanded even more on the emotion, more intimate. It became more raw, less technically precise, right? And we hear examples of this later career with I'm a Fool to Want You, which was especially a harsher voice. That was recorded in 1958. She died in 1959. So that's one of the latest ones we hear. Now, All of Me was actually fairly early in her career. It was 1941. And it was right at that time where her voice started changing. So when you hear her version of it, you start to get kind of that blend of more of the smooth tone, but with a little bit more of that harshness mixed in, right? So I imagine we're going to hear that kind of same emulation from Angelina. Now, the interesting thing is, um, some of you pointed out to watch my terminology and so forth. Now, this is at the age of 12, and the rest of these are 12, 13, 16. I think, are Angelina's covers of this, All of Me. And so she's obviously well seasoned at the age of 12, and she doesn't need to emulate anybody. She certainly has the ability to make it her own. This is the first one I've seen that late in her career. Not that that's late, right? But of Billie Holiday, I believe. I think I've only done like 6, 7, 8, 9 year old versions of her. So maybe 10. I don't think so. So maybe she's not entirely emulating Billie Holiday. Maybe she's making her own. This is kind of in those early years how I associated her with how she did Billie Holiday. So we will see. But yeah, I know this was a long intro. But I think again, in kicking off the mini series, I think it's important. So let's dive in. Same arrangement, might even be the same key.
All of me, why not take all of
Ooh.
me? Can't you see
Oh my
I'm no
goodness.
good without you? Take my lips, I
Are
want
you
to
kidding?
lose them. Take my arms, I never use them. Your goodbye left me with eyes that cry. How can I go on deep without you? You took the part that once was my heart, so why not take all of me? All
Wow. Okay. Um. Oh my goodness. So I just stopped here. I stopped there because I was expecting a more lengthy solo, right? The original is like a 32 bar, right? Musical bar, right? We hear doom, 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 doom. That's 4 beats in one musical measure or bar, right? And so there's 32 of those typically for the solo, and that's what we see in the timeless classic from Billie Holiday, where we have Lester Young, I believe it is, on the piano, and he takes two 8 bars, and then I think there's a piano one for 8, and then another Lester for 8. So it's 32, and here she only does 8, so she shortens it. which is interesting because it's like a karaoke track or something. So I don't know if she did her own mixing or somebody else did, but that's really neat, especially because that solo sounds like the same one from the most famous, iconic Billie Holiday recording. So it's just an abbreviated version of this. But you saw me kind of awestruck and dumbfounded here because her sound, like, so I'm not surprised by her sound anymore, especially at the age of 12. But what I am surprised at is what she's done with Billie Holiday and Billie Holiday's voice here, right? So I had mentioned Billie Holiday died in 1959. This was recorded in 1941. And so that version isn't as raspy and as deep. And, I think that at this time, Angelina was most familiar with I'm a Fool to Want You, which was much more raspy. And so she's not only fast forwarded the original version style of Billie Holiday more to the later in her career, adding that raspiness and that tone that you hear more of and I'm a Fool to Want You. But to me, it's almost like she's fast forwarded another decade beyond Billie's death, as if her voice continued to deteriorate more, right? And it's super fascinating. I don't think I've heard that much, or if we did earlier, maybe I didn't pay attention as much. I don't know, but I feel like she's taken it to the nth degree, um, and the styling and the phrasing for the most part, is very similar to what Billy does. The timing with the laid back, just general feel, not necessarily always being on the beat and things to this effect. Even the beginning, I believe the musical note starts on the beat, and then Billie Holiday actually doesn't start on the beat. And you see the same thing from Angelina Jordan here, right? So she's following a lot of the same, and I think it's the same chord progression. It might even be in the same key as Billie Holiday. So she's very selective on what she's changing and how. And we see this like post-mortem version of Billie Holiday here, like fast forward of almost a prediction of where Billie would have gone to in terms of her voice, right? And what that does for this piece is that early version of Billie Holiday in 1941, again, earlier in her career, she wasn't as emotive or emotionally involved and as vulnerable. It almost felt like she kind of counterbalanced her deterioration of voice and, abilities with that more expressive, that more evolved, that more vulnerable piece of it. And here, it's almost like Angelina has taken both of those further, and that, degrading and enhancing. And she's made you feel those lyrics so much deeper, that longing, the unrequited love, that all of me, right? This song all of me is like, you've taken my heart, why not just take all of me? Because what else is there, right? Get rid of the lips, get rid of the arms, it just doesn't even matter. That's kind of the theme here, right? And so now she's even doing this and so forth. She's so emotionally engaged in this song, it's like, it's absurd. And right from the get-go, that's what I heard when you saw me reacting in a big way. Like, oh my goodness, like she's taking this off the charts. Okay, well, let's get back to it with that shortened solo.
All of me, why not take all of me?
Wow, this girl. So now she's changing the melody as well, right? So here she's, all of me, why not take, I'm gonna sing on the same note and just alter it slightly, and right. So she's bending the pitch very slightly out of tune, and but it's the same note. So she's changed the melody, which gives it a much lighter feel. She's changed her tone here as well. So she gives a lot of variance to it, and I think it adds to that vulnerability.
Can't you see
Ooh,
I'm no
so much
good
for that.
without you? Take my lips, I want to lose them. Take my arms, I never use them. Your goodbye left me with eyes that cry.
Mm.
How can I go on deep without you?
I want to listen to that cry again.
Bye,
Listen to that.
bye.
That is 100% Angelina right here. 100%.
Left me with eyes that cry.
Uh.
How can I go on deep without you? You took the best, so why not take the rest? Baby, take all of me. Bye.
And of course we get that adorable bye at the end. I love that. So even at the end, that melodic line slightly changed. I think that Billie changed her version of it a little bit here. So we hear different variation from Angelina. So in most cases, subtle differences, but mostly that tone, that sound, that is pure brilliance. Like, I really wonder if she sat there, like, I can only imagine that she literally sat there singing, what's the best version of Billie to sing this song? Right? Like, which age or which representation of Billie should I do here? And she came to the conclusion that the not yet seen or heard version of Billie is the best one. Right? And I'm not talking about Angelina specifically. Like, it really feels like she's trying to create a version of Billie that didn't exist. Right? That the continued progression slash deterioration of Billie in that tone, because I don't think I've heard Billie sound like that. And it's not, I don't think it's just Angelina putting her own spin and flair on it. It really feels like she's trying to truly capture the essence of Billie. And it's not that far off from those later I'm a Fool to Want You time. It's just a further deterioration of voice and more involvement, commitment, emotively, right? Fantastic, amazing. I can't wait to see where she takes this. Right? All right. Well, so that's the end of the first one. I know this is a long one, but again, it's the first of a mini series, right? And so there's a lot more to it. That said, if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and do so now. And look, if you're an angel, folks are getting this in advance ahead of others. I did fall a little behind, so this one in particular, I think only a day or two, but you know, a regular basis, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 days in advance, people are getting videos, and you know, there's a number of other things. Specific requests. Almost all of what I'm doing these days are based on members' requests, to be honest. And I've got a queue that people can see, and they're contributing and so forth. So if that interests you, check out the link in the description. Regardless, I thank you. We will see you in the next one.